What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Binge on the King Crusoe YouTube channel. This week is episode 34 of the series, and today we are doing the 8th and final Dark Tower book review covering this entire epic series, though it is not my final Dark Tower video. More on that at the end of the video. Now, like Wolves of the Kala, this went by really quick for me. I read it super fast. I probably read it faster than any of the other books. Read it faster than Song of Susanna by a heck of a lot, because that book took me forever. Like, all told, it was about 7 days of reading to get through like 252,000 words. That's a really good pace for anybody, I feel like, but especially a good pace for me. I'm a pretty slow reader in terms of my words per minute, so the fact that I did that quick meant I was spending a lot of hours of every day for an entire week finishing this book. And surprisingly, my thoughts on this aren't nearly as mixed as I anticipated that they would be based on expectations, and a lot of that led to why I actually read it as fast as I did. But with all of that being said, let's actually move into the first section of the video covering what are the best elements of the Dark Tower, the book, not the series. I'm just going to make that distinction now because that's kind of obvious and I don't want to have to say it throughout the entire series. What are the best parts about the book? Pretty much everything to me, and you'll get this a lot more in a taste of next week's video, which I guess is a hint for what I'm going to tell you at the end. But where do I even start with this? Now, first off, the setups that began particularly in Wolves of the Kala, especially with certain arcs towards the end of this book, and especially with the villain, but also arcs that were begun, obviously from the very beginning of the series. The payoffs to all of those in this book were very, very, very good. I recall talking about in the Wolves of the Kala video about how that book had great references and callbacks to previous books in the series. I just thought it was kind of cool to kind of see that kind of arc go through those first 4 or 5 books, and then to see these last 3 books really come into their own with the payoffs to everything, but especially beginning from what was introduced in Wolves of the Kala. And this was all very beautiful to me. Just the way that it all circled back and came back to where it was before in ways that Discovery writers honestly typically can't do. The fact that Stephen King was able to do all of these things and make them pay off so well was really cool and kind of unexpected. And generally, there's actually really not that much more to say than that. The payoffs, the way that everything just satisfied itself within the book, but also within the series as a whole, as one might expect to happen. Every bit of this book was just amazing. Like, as a somewhat more specific example, and the fact that you're watching this review assumes that you've read at least through Song of Susanna, even the meta moments that were introduced in Song of Susanna were really cool. To me, that was my favorite part of that book. The way that those things in this book finished were very good as well. Even though King hurt me several times in this book with several things that happened, everything did wrap up beautifully, and I honestly don't think it could have been better. I mean, there's one element about it that a lot of people found disappointing at the very end that I guess could technically have been maybe done better, or at least done differently, but different doesn't always mean better. The way that it happened, I liked plenty, I liked really well, so I'm not too fussed about that. But I'll finish off this little section saying that even the absolute final conclusion was bittersweet and exactly what I expected it to be. It's kind of hard to talk about without doing spoilers, but like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I'll actually be getting into that. But now we move into the next section of what I think the worst elements of the Dark Tower are. Now, the first thing I think is somewhat more of a sort of objective point, just because I think the ultimate finale to this book can be a little bit disappointing for some. I know a lot of people who read the series who thought Song of Susanna and even this book were underwhelming or even just not good, the way that a lot of things were handled. So that could be a problem for some people. As I outlined in the previous section, I thought everything paid off well. This didn't really affect me, but the way that this book and even Song of Susanna to an extent did outline a particular element of the climax, I was expecting what I got, and that's why I didn't mind compared to other people who probably had a little bit higher expectations for those parts and were thus disappointed by what they got. There are many small instances of breaking the fourth wall in the writing of this book that I wasn't too hot on, but they were short enough and infrequent enough that they're not a huge problem for me. I'm somebody who is strangely sensitive to fourth wall breaks in books. Even just a single sentence of a fourth wall break within a book can not necessarily ruin the whole book for me, but it can be something that I latch onto and be like, yeah, I didn't like that. It's really noticeable and almost is never done properly. And I feel that way about several that occur throughout this novel. Like I said, the book's big enough and they happen infrequently enough that it's really not that big of an issue, even if it does irk me a little. And that was honestly the only legit issue I had with this book. But I will go into a little bit of another thing that I couldn't actually talk about in the Song of Susanna review because I hadn't read this book yet when I recorded that review. The biggest issue about this, I think, from an objective standpoint, and I think this is legit an objective standpoint, is pretty similar to the biggest problem with The Wastelands and Wizard and Glass, books 3 and 4 in the series. The Wastelands ended right in the middle of the climax, and Wizard and Glass started with the conclusion to that climax. Part 1 of book 4, pretty much in its entirety, should have been in book 3, and I think both books would have been better off for it. There's a similar situation with these last two books, but Song of Susanna was almost worse, in my opinion. That book ended right before the climax. It wasn't like The Wastelands where you got sort of into the climax and just cut off. Song of Susanna just didn't even have a climax in the first place, which is why it kind of felt so empty and incomplete to me. Feelings that I don't know if I articulated well enough in that video, but that book did feel empty and incomplete, and it felt paced really weirdly, and I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that it just did not have a climax, and that climax is in part 1 of this book. Similar to Wastelands and Wizard of Glass, part 1 of this entry is the climax to all 3 storylines that Song of Susanna follows, and again, 100% should have been in that previous book. There is a little bit of nuance to this opinion of mine, though, in the sense that I think Wizard and Glass and Wastelands would have both been improved by that kind of shift in, or the reallocation of part 1 of Wizard and Glass. I think they both would have been better off for it. I think Song of Susanna would have actually been a good book if it had part 1 of this one in it. But this book, the quality of it to me doesn't actually change whether part 1 is in it or not. So that is something that I guess is a little bit different and kind of surprising. The quality of The Dark Tower would not have changed if part 1 was actually in Song of Susanna, but Song of Susanna would have been a whole heck of a lot better if it was in there. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot more for me to say in this section or the last section at all. I cannot believe I loved this book so much. I can't really talk much more about how I feel without going into pretty deep, heavy spoilers, and I kind of want all of these videos to be spoiler-free. When it comes to future book series like Wheel of Time or something like that, where the books are not just longer, but the series is way longer, I might do something different where my reviews have a kind of spoiler-free section, and then I do a spoiler talk at the end of the videos. I'm not quite sure yet, but for these videos, these reviews for The Dark Tower, since I've been kind of consistent doing a spoiler-free thing for that book, even if I talk about some spoilers from the previous entries, I want to keep consistent with this one. I will conclude the actual review of this book by saying, after everything that I've heard about it, I did expect this to fall pretty clearly in the middle of the pack of the whole series in terms of a ranking, if not the bottom of the series quality. Instead, it's a little bit higher than that, and if you want to see where it's ranking, I hinted at this a few times in the video, be sure to come back next week for the next video where I do rank and actually talk spoilers about all 8 books in the series. Now, I know that rankings are kind of a more they're a more popular type of video where people who haven't read the books can watch those, but I don't think I want to do something like that with this ranking, because I've been doing these spoiler-free videos on the reviews. I want to be able to actually talk about spoilers and explain why I like, or in some cases dislike, certain parts of the different books. So the ranking next week that I'm going to be doing will be going into heavy spoilers for the entire series. So if you want to hear more spoilery thoughts on all of the books, but also a ranking of the entire series, do check that out when it drops next Monday. I'm very excited about that video. I expect that a lot of people are going to be very surprised by several placements in that. And I'll just leave it there. Just as always, check out seasonalproductions.com for a backlog of all of my YouTube and my writing content all in one place. Other than that, I don't really have much else to say. So thank you guys for watching. I'll be back again next week with that Dark Tower ranking video.